Να κατακαθίσουμε. Ναι, ευχαριστώ. Λοιπόν, να ξεκινήσουμε, γιατί είμαστε και λίγο ένα δεκάλεπτο εκτός ώρας, αλλά άφησα λίγο χρόνο γιατί ο κύριος Δαδιώτης κουράστηκε και έτσι είπαν... Η ηλικιακή ομάδα των συνέδρων είναι μικρή όμως, οπότε μπορεί να αντέξει. Λοιπόν, να συνεχίσουμε αν θέλετε, παρακαλώ πολύ να καθίσετε. Το επόμενο δορυφορικό συμπόσιο θεωρώ ότι έχει ιδιαίτερα μεγάλη σημασία για πάρα πολλούς λόγους. Αφενός μεν γιατί τα θέματα της ασφάλειας του αίματος μας έχουν απασχολήσει κατά καιρούς και συνεχίζουν να μας απασχολούν. Αφετέρου γιατί για πολλούς ίσως θεωρείται ότι κάποια κομμάτια είναι υπερβολικά ή κοστίζουν πάρα πολύ και δεν θα πρέπει να μας απασχολούν. Υπάρχει ένας διεθνής προβληματισμός όσον αφορά τα καινούργια μέτρα για την ασφάλεια του αίματος που προστίθενται και όχι που απαλύνουν, αν θέλετε, το οικονομικό βάρος της αιμοδοσίας. Η αδρανοποίηση παθογόνων είναι ένα πολύ υποσχόμενο κομμάτι της εξέλιξης των θεμάτων της ασφάλειας του αίματος, και αυτό γιατί παρότι λύσαμε τα σημαντικά προβλήματα που έχουν να κάνουν με την ασφάλεια του αίματος, συνεχίζουν και μας προκύπτουν όλο και καινούρια. Μην ξεχνάτε ότι έχουμε την βακτηριακή επιμόλυνση των προϊόντων αίματος, των αιμοπεταλίων αλλά και των υπόλοιπων προϊόντων. Μην ξεχνάτε ότι είχαμε και θα έχουμε καινούργιες απειλές όσον αφορά την ασφάλεια του αίματος. Βλέπε Δυτικό Νείλο, βλέπε την ελονοσία. Την απάντηση την ψάχνουμε στους κλασικούς δρόμους της ασφάλειας που έχει να κάνει με τη δυνατότητα να διαγνώσουμε αυτά τα νοσήματα, αλλά υπάρχει ένα άλλο πολύ μεγάλο κεφάλαιο που λέγεται αδρανοποίηση, που δεν έχει να κάνει οπωσδήποτε με τη διαγνωστική διαδικασία, αλλά που έχει να κάνει με την ασφάλεια του τελικού προϊόντος αίματος. Με αυτό το σκεπτικό και πιστεύοντας πραγματικά ότι εμείς στις αιμοδοσίες είμαστε λίγο διχασμένες προσωπικότητες, γιατί είμαστε μεταξύ υπηρεσίας και μεταξύ βιομηχανίας, θυμίζω ότι στη λογική των αιμοδοσιών δεν είναι οπωσδήποτε να διαγνώσουμε τι νόσημα έχει ενδεχομένως ή κρύβει ο αιμοδότης, αλλά αυτό που θέλουμε να πούμε είναι ότι το τελικό προϊόν που μεταγγίζουμε είναι ελεύθερο από παθογόνα. Άρα η λογική της αδρανοποίησης θα πρέπει να είναι μέσα στο μυαλό μας, και βέβαια επειδή θα πείτε αυτό μας έλειπε τώρα σε μια τόσο δύσκολη εποχή, ίσως η αναθεώρηση όλων των πρακτικών που ακολουθούμε, ίσως το μάζεμα γενικότερα του χώρου της αιμοδοσίας και των διαδικασιών μας επιτρέψει να επενδύσουμε σε ένα τέτοιο σημαντικό κομμάτι που λέγεται αδρανοποίηση. Έχουμε δύο εκλεκτούς ομιλητές στο σημερινό πάνελ. Θα ξεκινήσουμε με τον καθηγητή, τον κύριο Σάμπρη. Είναι μικροβιολόγος, επιδημιολόγος, είναι διευθυντής του Κέντρου Αναφοράς για τα Αναδυόμενα Λοιμώδη Νοσήματα στην Ιταλία, μέλος του Ευρωπαϊκού Δικτύου για τα Ιογενή Νοσήματα, σε στενή συνεργασία με το ECDC, το European Center for Disease Control. Προς το παρόν κατέχει τη θέση του αναπληρωτή καθηγητή της ιατρικής μικροβιολογίας και είναι επικεφαλής του εργαστηρίου ιατρικής βακτηριολογίας στο Πανεπιστήμιο της Μπολόνιας. So, Professor Sambri, we welcome you in Greece. Thank you very much for coming in Greece and having a talk with such an interesting subject. We're waiting to hear you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for having inviting me to this beautiful place and to share some of the experience that we had in Italy in the last 5 years about emerging infection that can pose threats to the safety of blood supply. Well, what I'm going to talk to you today is basically connected to mosquito, because mosquito are posing threat to blood supply not only in this way, but there are many other ways that can play in this game. Let me start with this slide that show you how the interest about transfusion-transmitted infection rose in the last 10 years. If you go to the slide and you look at the black bars, you see the number of papers describing problems related to TTI in the last 10 years, and you see that the number is still there, is still increasing. Because where we are today about transfusion-transmitted infection, we know for sure that preventing viral infection is a well-established reality. And preventing bacterial infection could be a reality. We have still, at least under my point of view, something to do. And we don't know, or I could say we didn't knew at that time if preventing emerging infection is nowadays a necessity. This is a list that you know for sure better than me about the viral agents that can be transmitted by blood transfusion. And you see there is a long list starting with HIV and following the hepatitis viruses, and you see new emerged viruses, and I will go deeper in this field. And you see that in the last 15 years, there is a list of emerging agents that have been hypothesized to play a role in TTI. And on the other hand, the control measure that the transfusionist took in place to decrease the risk for transmitting HCV, HBV, and HIV, as you see in the curves, were really effective. But even if we worked a lot on these, there are still some potential emerging infectious disease that can be dangerous to blood transfusion. Okay, let me try to explain what I'm bearing in mind when I'm talking about an emerging infection. So defining an emerging infection is not that easy. What we know for sure is that at least 40 different diseases exist today that were completely unknown a generation ago. And more than 1,000 epidemics events were verified by the WHO in the last 10 years. And emerging infectious diseases are thus defined as those whose incidence in humans have increased within the past 2 decades, or there is a risk for an increase of prevalence of this disease in the near future. And what are the causes of the emerging infectious disease? This is just a list of my ideas. I think that one of the most important points is globalization. We are living in a globalized world. There is no escape. We have to face with this problem. And globalization means immigration, poverty, velocity of travels, and global food. I was really astonished when I learned by a good friend of mine that if you eat something like salad in Italy in January or in February, it's likely that this has not been produced in Europe, but in Egypt. And, you don't know that, but it's a reality we have to face with each day. And one of the consequences, or maybe a cause, of globalization is climate change. I'm not here to put your attention to this in a definitive way. I know for sure that in my area, we checked it carefully with meteorologists, the mean temperature has risen by 1.5 degrees in the last 10 years. That's a huge amount of heat that has been posed in the environment. So 1.5 degrees in 10 years is really a big issue. So there is increase of temperature that causes modification in vegetation, in wildlife, and of course, the final effect is an increase in arthropod vectors. Just to give you an idea, this is a very famous, even old slide that relate the days that are required for circumnavigate the world and the world population. If you go back to mid-19th century, the days to circumnavigate the world was about 1 year, and today is probably three days. And at that time, the total population was really low, and now we are more than 6 billion. That means there is a lot of people traveling around in a very fast way, and we cannot keep control on that. And traveling means that people can bear with them viruses, vectors, and everything. So, just to go deeper in the field, this is a list of potentially important pathogen related to blood transfusion, of emerging pathogen. And it's interesting to me to underline that there is a different perception in between the public and the science. Because if you go to what is generally the general opinion of people, they feel as very dangerous some agents that are really only theoretical, but they don't feel really important agents that are known to be transmitted, like Plasmodia or T. cruzi or B19. And this is interesting because, I mean, it's an issue that we need to solve in order to be aware of what is really important. So we must be aware that the emerging pathogen can cause threat to blood safety. And as far as I know, the leading cause of emerging transmitted infection are probably zoonotic disease, like mad cow disease, West Nile, Usutu, chikungunya, and dengue. And as I told you before, the issue related to these viruses is the issue of how many mosquitoes we do have around in our area, because mosquitoes are the most important cause of transmission and bearing of these viruses in the environment. And I will briefly take you through this list of agents that we had to face with in the last 5 years. So let's start with this map. This map shows you the distribution of the so-called Asian tiger mosquito, Aedes albopictus, in Europe. And in red, you see the area in which, in 2011, the Aedes albopictus was present. I did not update this map because it is not really different in the last 2 years, but the red area spread all over the southern coast of France and southern coast of Spain. So I could say that most of the northern part of the Mediterranean shore is involved in this diffusion. And why is this so important? Because Aedes albopictus is the vector of two really important transmitted viruses like dengue virus and chikungunya virus. And let's start with chikungunya. Chikungunya is an arthropod-borne virus. The epidemiology of this infection, as far as we know, started in the mid-50s in East Africa, in Tanzania, where the virus was first identified. And since that time, the virus jumped all over the continent, giving rise to a small outbreak. And this was true up to 2004, when the virus moved eastbound and reached the area of Kenya and Comoros, giving more than 5,000 cases. But the most important fact in the epidemiology of chikungunya is that in 2005 and 2006, the virus reached the island of La Réunion, that is a French territory. And under the scientific and public health point of view, it was exactly the same as the virus was arrived in Paris, because it was the first time that the public attention was drawn toward these epidemics. And in La Réunion, it's estimated that it was an epidemic involving more than 300,000 population, that is 1/3 of the total population of the island. And after this very important episode, the virus moved to India, with it's believed to cause about 1.5 million cases right now, and then moved again to eastbound to Malaysia, Thailand, and so on. So right now the epidemic is still going on in Singapore, where it is almost impossible to take it under control. And this means, if you look at this area, that we could have imported cases in Europe. And in fact, France, Spain, Germany, Norway, Switzerland, and the US reported imported case of this disease buried by people coming back from this touristic area. This map shows you where the epidemics was spreading, and it is important to me to see that the E is also above Italy, because we had the first episode of local diffusion of chikungunya virus outside the tropical area in 2007. And it was exactly in this area, nearby the coast of the Adriatic Sea, like here. And the number in the red circle report the total number of cases that have been identified in this small area. This is a range of about 40 kilometers. So it was a local epidemics that began mid-July 2007 and ended end of September 2007. But what is really important is that we had more than 200 confirmed cases of infection. And all these cases have been caused by local transmission caused by Aedes albopictus, because we identified the virus either in patient and in mosquito and the environment. So the virus was there. The virus was there because there was an importation made by an Indian citizen, immigrant to Italy, that was returning back from Kerala to our area bearing the virus during the viremic stage. And so the mixture of vectors, because Aedes albopictus was there, and since 4 years, and the presence of viremic individual mixed together these two facts started the epidemics that was really not really an important one under the number of people that was involved, but it was important because it was the first time that a tropical virus was spread in Europe. And these phylogenetic trees show you that the virus was really coming from India. Not to go too much into detail, but these are the viruses that we isolated in our area, and these are the most recently identified viruses from India. So the virus was coming there from India. And why the virus was able to spread there? Because there was just one single amino acid mutation in the E1 protein. That for a toga virus is really common, because the virus can mutate the genome very rapidly and become more transmittable by different vectors. So the problem is to control the virus and to control the vectors. Coming to the issue of blood transfusion, in the area affected by the epidemic, we had more than 10,000 voluntary blood donors. It's at the blood bank of Italy, because there is a huge amount of blood donation. And in that epidemics, we decided to stop collecting blood in that area, because we didn't know nothing about the possibility that chikungunya was transmitted, actually. As a consequence, we performed a retrospective study, and we found that 18% of the infected persons were fully asymptomatic. That means that if we would allow to give blood to these people, from these people, the risk of having some donation infected was not so high, but was anyway present. So that's another issue that we have to think about. And let's go to dengue. Dengue, as you see here in the map, is a worldwide spread flavivirus transmitted by Aedes aegypti and as well by Aedes albopictus. The best vector is Aedes aegypti, not the Aedes albopictus that is present in Europe, but Aedes aegypti is present in the archipelago of Madeira, that is a Portugal bunch of islands, and this is really important. Of course, all the green area are at risk for acquiring dengue, and of course these areas are the most touristic area in the world, and so dengue is a potential problem, not only for imported case, because we must bear in mind, but because in 2010 and in 2012 we had autochthonous transmission of dengue in Europe. In 2010, there were a bunch of cases in Marseille that were caused by people coming back from the tropical area with the virus during the viremic stage. And since there is the vector there in southern France, there was really a local transmission that was really limited. It involved no more than 3 to 4 persons, but it's a big signal. It's a big signal. And this is just very recent data, it appeared in Eurosurveillance last week, and that reported as 42 people getting back from Madeira in Germany and then UK were bearing dengue virus during the acute stage of disease. So I think that it's not probably a big issue, but we have to think about, because the dengue virus has the potential to be spread also by Aedes albopictus. So all the area that contains Aedes albopictus is at risk for this virus. Oh, let's go to West Nile. West Nile is a flavivirus that you know for sure very well, because Greece is probably one of the worst affected area in Europe, excluding Russia, in the last couple of years. And West Nile is a arbovirus, again, is not transmitted by Aedes mosquito, but mainly by Culex mosquito, that are not tropical mosquito, but the local mosquito we have in Europe since 1000 here. And the problem is that the virus can be transmitted through birds, migrant birds in particular, to mosquito and to what we call dead end host, like horses and men. The problem of West Nile is that beside the possibility that the infection is transmitted by mosquito bite, there is a huge concern about blood transfusion and solid organ transplantation. And this is why, because 80% of the infected persons are totally asymptomatic. That means that they can bear the virus without any clinical symptoms. So there is no way to identify them by clinical issues. 20% of the infected persons are probably just affected by the so-called West Nile fever, that is a mild fever disease like a flu, and less than 1% of the affected people develop a severe neurological disease that is probably best characterized by meningoencephalitis, that it can be also fatal. But the true problem, getting back to the problem of blood donation, is this 80% of asymptomatic persons that are infected. So, given this fact, the ECDC started a working group in 2011 that involved many of the people from the area in which West Nile was spreading. And just to give you an idea, Greece, Romania, all the southern part of the Volga basin, and Italy as well is actually involved by West Nile circulation with different prevalence, but the virus is there. So the ECDC decided to start a working group that monthly report the area in which the virus is circulating, in order to state which could be the risk of transmission of this infection with blood transfusion. And the problem of West Nile, I know that you cannot read that, but the problem of West Nile is that this virus is really variable. Just to give you an idea, this is a phylogenetic tree that report the virus we isolated in 2008 in Italy. So all the viruses are more or less the same virus, very equal. These three report the virus that we isolated in 2011 and 2012. And The one you see here are down here, but there are more like here and like here that are completely different. And this means that the virus can mutate, and if the virus mutates its genome, can also be more difficult to be identified with the genetic tool we have available. This is really important. And in addition, Greece has reported for the first time the presence of West Nile lineage 2. It's a different virus, not so far away from the lineage 1 that was circulating, but lineage 2 has a different genome. Up to the report we had from Greece, from Anna Papa in Thessaloniki, we were thinking that West Nile lineage 2 was not really impacting human health. But since that data, we know for sure, and we identified the virus in Italy as well, so we have a mixed problem. We know for sure that the method we have available for detecting West Nile in the laboratory are capable to pick up West Nile lineage 1. We don't know for sure which is the sensitivity and the specificity of this method for lineage 2. So this poses a big question mark on this issue. Just to give you an idea, this is quite a complicated table, but I just want to draw your attention to the fact that it's an EQA scheme that we performed in Italy last year. So we selected the two methods that are available today, that is one from Novartis, the second one is from Roche. And we selected different strain of West Nile, we mixed it with blood, and we distributed all over the country in order to have an idea about the performance of this test. And as you can see here, the two tests performed in a different way. And this is lineage 2. You see that not all the tests were equally capable to pick up low dilution of lineage 2. And this is a very big issue because when you are dealing with the potential infected blood donors, you are usually dealing with very low viral load in the blood. So it's a very important issue. Oh, let's move to the last of the flavivirus that we identified in Italy, Usutu. Usutu is an African virus that belongs to the Japanese encephalitis serogroup. It's really close to West Nile, really close to West Nile. Again, this is an African flavivirus, and since the late 50s, the virus was known to circulate only in Africa up to in 2001, when Usutu emerged in Austria. And in Austria in 2001, Usutu emerged because it caused a large mortality of birds, including birds of prey and including birds living in the zoo of Vienna. And so it was identified by the veterinarian like a curiosity because it was an African virus that was not hypothesized to stay there. But since 2001, Usutu has been identified in birds and in vector all over Europe, in Hungary, in Italy, in Czech Republic, in Switzerland, in Poland, so it's spread in Central Europe. It's transmitted by culex, so the vector is there, no problem. And no mammalian reservoir are identified so far, so it's a problem of vectors and birds, as far as we know. And the minimal requirement for having this virus circulating is that we should have at least 10 odd days in summer. That is really common. 10 odd days, that means more than 30 degrees per day. So it's common all over Europe, probably just excluding Russia and the northern part of Germany. Usutu at that time was just identified as a veterinarian problem, but in 2009 there were two cases that one of those cases was reported by my laboratory that involved human disease caused by Usutu. And this was possible because we were making screening procedure for West Nile in solid organ transplant. And during that procedure, we identified by NAT a strange result in a patient that was receiving a liver transplantation. Following that, we decided to go deeper in the field, try to identify the virus that was giving this strange NAT result, because it was very low, but it was not clear. So we identified the virus, we sequenced the virus, we isolated the virus, and it turned out it was Usutu. Since that, the interest for this virus was really growing because, you know, in those two cases there was, those two cases were involved with the immunodepressed patient. But we didn't know about the circulation of the virus among healthy humans. So we started a lot of investigation in this area. And as far as we know today, in 2013, Uzutu is capable to give viremia in healthy human, because we found a lot of blood donors in the area where Uzutu is still circulating, because Uzutu has probably displaced West Nile in northern Italy. It's a strange phenomenon, but we didn't find any West Nile after 2010 in my area, because all the vectors and all the birds were infected by Uzutu. So Uzutu arrived there probably and displaced the West Nile from the circulation. And since that, we tried to find out if this displacement was also involving humans. And we found that there is quite a huge percentage of blood donors that are bearing Uzutu-specific antibody. That means that Uzutu infected this person that did not report any clinical symptoms. So it's a case probably of asymptomatic viremia, but we don't know what does it could mean, because we know that Uzutu can circulate in that population, but we don't know. So let me try to drive you very quickly to a list of hypotheses that we have to face with. Hepatitis virus E. The E virus is still a big problem because we don't know anything about it under the virological point of view. And this is just a report made in 2011, and apparently hepatitis E is not a problem for blood donation, and this is a very good news because we don't know about the epidemiology of the virus, and so that's a good news. And Coxiella burnetii, the agent that causes Q fever, as you for sure know, there is a huge epidemic still going on in the Netherlands and in the northern part of Germany, and apparently this is not involving in any way the blood donation. Of course, there was and there is still a huge concern about influenza virus, especially when the H1N1 appeared in 2009. And this study clearly demonstrates that that virus was not transmissible by blood donation. And of course, the concern is raised again in the last weeks since the appearance of the H7N9 that is making a huge epidemic in China, so we don't know about that virus again. I would like to get the conclusion showing you this small list of slides. This is a policy recommendation made to the European Parliament that states that the blood-borne pathogen are a problem for the health of European citizens, since there are emerging pathogens in the EU territory. There is no escape. So we have to face this. And this policy recommendation that has been presented to the European Parliament state that the pathogen reduction technology could be a solution. Could be, because of course I'm a virologist, so the best option I would like to have is to identify precisely each single agent that is present in a blood donation. But this is really costly and this is really complicated because as you saw, there is a huge mutation in the genome of these viruses. So it could be really you have a tool that you don't know exactly how it can work. And so pathogen reduction technology could be an issue. And I thank you so much for your attention, just showing you that we probably missed the bogeyman in our nightmare. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sambri. We have time for one burning question from the audience, if there is a burning question. Υπάρχει χρόνος για μια ερώτηση καυτή. Okay, so thank you very much.